So here I'm going to first explain to you the pin. The pin is basically when you attack a piece and that piece cannot move. And that can be for two reasons. First of all, we're going to take a look here at the absolute pin. So if we put our bishop on this diagonal, you will see this black knight cannot move, because if the black knight moves, the king would be under attack. And that is an illegal move. So this knight is pinned to the enemy king. Then next up, we have another example here. You can see that this is a diagonal on which both the rook and the king are lined up. So if we move our bishop, we attack this rook. The rook is not able to move, and then we will be able to capture it. So just another easy example of the pin. And then here we have an example of the relative pin. So the absolute pin was when the piece was just not able to move. With the relative pin, the piece can move, but you don't really want to move it, because otherwise you would lose a more valuable piece. So for example here, if you play bishop c3, you can see we are attacking the rook. And if the rook were to move somewhere, we will be able to capture the queen. The queen is even more valuable than the rook. So here, black will just move the queen, and we will be able to take this. And here we have a winning position. So then here, just a quick exercise for you. How can you exploit this pin? So this knight is pinned to the enemy king by our rook, meaning the knight cannot move. Well, what are you going to do? Are you going to capture this with your rook, or is there a better move? So the best move in this position is to exploit this pin. So usually if a piece is pinned, it can be really beneficial to attack it with more pieces, or here attack it with a pawn, because the piece cannot move, and then you will be able to capture and you will have a winning position. Then we're going to take a look at the skewer, which is a different tactic, but it's kind of similar as the pin. I kind of call this the reverse pin. Because with a pin, you attack a piece and the opponent can't or doesn't want to move that piece. With the skewer, we are attacking a piece that they will for sure want to move, but we are actually attacking the piece that is behind it. So here you can see on this diagonal, we have the enemy queen and the enemy rook. So if we put our bishop here, the enemy queen has to move, because otherwise black would just lose a queen. So it's going to move, and then we capture this rook. And of course, a rook is more valuable than a bishop, so here we were able to win material. Just another example here. This might maybe seem a little bit difficult if you have not seen this pattern before, but you don't always need to use your bishops, of course, for pins and skewers. You can also use other pieces. So here, for example, we can play rook to d2, and I'll show you. Rook to d2 attacks the queen, and it also attacks this rook behind it. And black will here sacrifice the queen. That's the best move, and then we can recapture. If black were to, for example, move the queen, then we would have takes with the rook, black takes back, and we can take with the queen, and we would win a full rook. So here, black's option is to just take, and of course we take with the bishop, because we didn't want to lose our queen. Okay. Here we have another example of a skewer, and this is actually a good exercise for you. So if you want to pause the video, do it now, because I will be showing you the answer now. So here there is not an immediate skewer, but there is a sacrifice you need to play first. You need to play rook takes e4. Rook takes e4. So we take the bishop, the enemy queen takes, and then we can play our skewer with bishop c6. The enemy queen has to move, or they cannot also choose not to move, but then they lose a queen. And then here we can take a full rook. So we captured their rook for free in the end. We sacrificed our rook for our bishop. So basically we just got a rook and a bishop for sacrificing our rook. So we won an entire bishop. And those were all examples of relative skewers, meaning they can choose to move the piece or not. Here I will show you the absolute skewer. So there, white here has to move the piece. So it's pretty similar again. We're going to attack the king, but of course if the king is attacked, white has to move it. There's not a simple, another option for him. So if he moves the king, we can take the queen. So that is the absolute skewer. And here just another example, how can you do a skewer here? So I already see this is lined up on this diagonal, but of course you have to think, if you play your bishop here, for example, while black will just be able to capture it. Okay, and if you, for example, do a skewer here with the queen, well, black will just be able to move. So what can you do here? There's a little sacrifice. You can play bishop e5, and of course black has to capture, otherwise he loses the queen, and then you have this queen c3, and you can take this queen for free. Then here, another exercise for you. So if you want to, you can always pause the video and see if you can find it. So what is the skewer here? So the thing that I am looking at is, of course, the enemy king has to be the target of our attack. So I'm already looking at ways to attack the enemy king. There are many ways to attack him with our queen, but all of those lose material. And we can also attack the enemy king with our rook. But if we attack the enemy king with our rook, he will just be able to flee to this square. So I want you to take a look here. This is a little bit maybe more complicated. And it involves a sacrifice as well. So here, you can sacrifice your queen. Queen takes f7, and of course, yeah, black has to do something, otherwise we get a free queen. So black captures, and then bam, we attack the king, and we take this queen for free. So that was the skewer. Next up, we have the fork. There are many different types of forks, but of course, the most famous one is the knight fork. You just move your knight, bam, you attack two pieces at the same time. Especially if the king is among the attacked pieces, that's even better, because the king has to move, and then you can just capture here this queen for free. Then I'll show you another knight fork. Here, maybe you can see if you can solve this for yourself if you want to do this as a puzzle exercise. It's a nice sacrifice, and then you will also be able to do a knight fork. So the answer to this is to play queen to h8, which is an incredible queen sacrifice, because the only thing black can do is capture, and then whoop, we take this rook, and we also take the queen afterwards. Then here, you don't have to always use your knight to fork. You can also fork with a pawn, especially if you notice two pieces standing close to each other like here. You can play your pawn up. Of course, yeah, black has to move one of them, and then you can take the other piece. So that is also a common theme, especially in openings. For example, in this position, that's something you can get a lot against beginner players in the opening. They will just allow you to fork two of their pieces, and then you can capture it for free. A rook can also do a fork here, especially if two pieces are on the same line. We can do a check with the rook, then the enemy piece has to move, and we can take this bishop. And then, of course, the same goes for our bishop can also do a fork, but only if two pieces are on the same diagonal. So basically, you can do a fork with any of your pieces except with your king. I don't think you will be able to do a fork with your king. And if you can do a fork with your king, let me know. Yeah, I actually think you can do a fork with your king in some positions, because you can always attack a bishop and a knight at the same time, and then your opponent will not be able to save both of them. So you can actually do a king fork. I almost forgot about that one. So here we have another nice fork with the queen. Of course, the queen is an incredible forking piece because of her power. You can go here, and then you have a fork with your queen, and you get a free rook. Then the next thing I wanted to show you is the discovered attack. So with the discovered attack, you are moving a piece, but by moving your piece, you are actually freeing up another one of your pieces that is now suddenly way more active and dangerous. So here, if you move the knight and we give a check, black will have to move. And after black moves, so let's say black moves here, you will be able to take this queen. And here, our rook, of course, was blocked by our own knight, so we had to move it so we could take the queen. Then here, another example. Again, it's a bit similar. Move the knight, you get a check, and then you can take the queen. Let's see if we can find another one. Yeah, this is another one. So this is also a pretty common discovered attack that you can play. Your bishop is sometimes behind the pawn, blocking its scope on the diagonal. So if you can move the pawn, we are attacking the rook. The enemy rook has to move, and then you can take this piece. So here I'm going to give you a little moment to see if you can solve this yourself and try and find the discovered attack here. So for the solution, we are going to see if you found the solution. So the first thing we are noticing here is our rook is actually on the same line as the enemy king. So if we move our knight to any of those squares, the enemy king will be under attack by our rook. And you can already see that the enemy king cannot go here or here because of our light squared bishop. This is also blocked by his own pawns. This is blocked by his own pieces. So the only thing that black can do is move here or here. But of course, after we move our knight, the rook will also take up this square. So after we move the knight, the only possible move for white will be to go into this corner. So what we can do is we can give a check. black has to go into the corner, and then we also have a checkmate here. We also have an incredible checkmate. Because our knight goes here and he takes the rook, check, we are taking away these squares with the knight and these squares with our rook, and of course the king is also blocked in because of its own pieces. And then we're going to take a look at another exercise. This is another one for you to try and solve, so maybe pause the video and see if you can find it. So here there are already a lot of interesting things to look at. So a discovered attack, we will have to move one of our own pieces to free up another one. So for example, moving the knight will free up this bishop, moving this knight somewhere will free up this bishop. But here I already noticed that if I move my knight, for example here, then all of a sudden I have this attack with my bishop on the enemy bishop. And that is a pretty good attack because we are also winning a pawn and our knight is closing in on the enemy position. So that is definitely a move you can consider to play. And if white takes the knight, we will always be able to capture their bishop with a check. And if white was to take our bishop, we even had an incredible attack. I'll see if I can show you. Yeah, so I wanted to quickly show you this attack as well. So here, if for example, let's say white takes this bishop, here there is queen b6, check. Well, of course, putting the rook in between there or the bishop here is not that good. So black will go back, white will go back, I mean, and then we have checkmate because the queen is also covering those squares. So that's a really beautiful checkmate as well. So then I'm going to teach you the double check. So the double check is probably one of the most amazing tactics. If you put your enemy in check, they always have a couple of options. They can move the king, they can block with a piece, or they can capture your attacker. So there's always multiple options for black. They can move, they can capture your attacker, or they can block. But if you have a double check, the only option is to move your king. So here we have a check with the knight and a check with the rook. And that's what I mean. Usually if this was just a knight check, black would be able to capture. Or if this was just a rook check, black would be able to go back or even block in some positions. But here black has to go in and then get checkmated. So here another example, a really beautiful example. And this is similar to what we have just seen, but now we add a little layer of tactics to it to set this up. So here we're going to do a queen sacrifice, queen to h1 check. And of course, the only option is to take us. And then boom, we got knight g3, check. And this was actually a double check, same as we have seen before. And then we have this checkmate. This is also a really famous tactical pattern that you will get a lot if you solve puzzles online. You can always try to find this, but if you have not seen this before, it might be a little bit difficult, but go ahead and try if you can find this. So here, the solution is actually to play another beautiful queen sacrifice, queen d8 check. The only thing black can do is capture, and then bam, we have the double check. We've got this, black has to move, and then we have a checkmate. This is also a really famous position. And then here, maybe you will be able to find this, because this is similar to what we have seen before. So you can take a look and see if you can find it. So here the move is queen e8, sacrifice the queen, and now you might think, well, what do I have here? But the trick is, we promote to a queen with a check, black takes, and then boom, we have a beautiful checkmate. Let me show you that again because it's skipped. So queen e8, we promote to a queen, and then we have a beautiful checkmate. Because these bishops are taking away these lines, and then these rooks are also here dominating the board. So just beautiful. The next step is overloaded pieces. An overloaded piece is a piece that just has too much work to do. It has two tasks. So for example, here you can see that this pawn is protecting both the knight and the bishop. So this pawn has a lot of work. If we just capture one of the pieces, well, the pawn will have to move, and then we take this bishop. So another example here, just take a quick look. This knight is stopping our checkmate, because otherwise, if this knight was not here, we would have queen h7 checkmate. And this knight is also stopping us from doing a pawn fork. So if we just play the pawn fork, the knight cannot take us, because if the knight captures, we have checkmate. So here black has to move. And while you might now think, well, he has an attack on your queen, well, of course, we can also just promote to a queen, and even if he captures us, we still have a winning position. Here, of course, it's better to move your queen because we're under attack from the knight. Because if you just take this rook, he will take your queen as well. So here another position. So the h7 pawn here, the h7 pawn has two responsibilities, and I will give you a little moment to see if you can figure this out on your own. So the solution to this is the pawn has two responsibilities. He has to protect, and he is also making sure this one cannot run to the end of the board. So here there is the amazing move bishop h5, and of course if black takes, we can push this pawn, and then this one will be able to promote. And if he captures us, that doesn't work. So if he just moves the bishop, we can actually do another amazing tactic. Bishop takes, and again, if the pawn takes, we can push, and he will not be in time. So he has to move the bishop once again. And then here you could, for example, do something like bishop takes here. So that's really an amazing move as well. Then the next thing I wanted to show you is an in-between move. So usually in chess, when you have a really clear move, like for example, you want to capture this bishop, I mean, you just want to take this, it's just a free piece. Sometimes it's better to make a different move first. But you should take a look at this position and think, what other move could I play instead of just straight up capturing this bishop? Is there something else? So you can take a look at the position and see if there is something else you can play. Well, the thing I notice is that we actually have a pretty good move with our knight. If we go with our knight to one of these squares, we're actually threatening to deliver a check and a fork on the queen. And at the same time, after moving our knight, for example, here, let's say here, for example, if the bishop tries to do something, we also always have our queen that can participate. So those squares look interesting to me, but there's something else. Also knight d5, because after knight d5, we have this check. And if knight d5, of course, the bishop cannot go back, because otherwise we would be able to capture it. So if we play knight e5, I don't think white even has any moves. For example, he can move here. And then, yeah, I think that he can only move here. And then we can now always capture. But we were able to make an in-between move, and white is also in a lot of trouble here because of our checks. So here, you would say, well, maybe I'm gonna take this bishop. So that's possible. You could also say, maybe you are gonna do this check. And after this check, of course, white has to move. And you can go somewhere, for example, here with the king. Let's just play. Yeah, and then the king has to go there. And then because we played an in-between move, we now have the option to either capture this rook or to capture this bishop. But here I would say you can capture this rook and white recaptures, and then we can still take this bishop. Then next up is the X-ray attack. So an X-ray is attacking through an enemy piece. So this is also a really famous one. We're trying to checkmate here, but black is being annoying and blocking us. So how can we stop this? Well, there's actually queen e8 check. It's a check on the enemy king, and if black captures us, we have a checkmate as well. Then here we have another one. Our knight is kind of stuck here. This is also an interesting one. Our knight is kind of stuck here. White has a lot of pieces. Like, what can we do? Like, if we want to move the knight, what are we gonna do? We can also capture this bishop. There are so many things here. But a good move for black is just to give this check. And white is in check, and none of these squares work. So white has to do something. For example, he puts the rook in between, but again, doesn't really help. Check. And white is in a lot of trouble. Again, check. And now you might say, well, white can just go here, but of course we always have our knight g3, and then we are threatening this famous checkmate pattern here. And then just another X-ray attack here. Maybe you should take a look if you could find this one. So another beautiful X-ray attack. So what I want to do here is I want to checkmate. I want to checkmate with my queen. But if I do this, well, black is just going to capture us. But we already had a bishop here, eyeing up this square as well. So now that black has moved, we have this checkmate. Then next up, we have to take a look at the Greek gift sacrifice. So the Greek gift sacrifice is a really common tactical move in chess openings, where you are going to sacrifice your bishop here on this h7 pawn. And we are doing this in order to draw out the enemy king. Of course, the enemy king can also just move to the corner, but then he is down a pawn. And in many variations, if they take us, we have check with the knight. And then the enemy king has to go somewhere. And often you will also be able to infiltrate here with the queen and deliver a checkmate. So this is another example of a position like this. You can always sack your bishop here. And here black is not going to take, because if black takes, he is also in a lot of trouble. Because queen check, king has to go back, and then you are threatening checkmate. And the only way to avoid this is by giving up the queen. So for example, black can play something like this, but then still we can play our queen there to threaten some checkmate tactics. And here black is just going to sacrifice the queen. And then you have checks like this. And then the enemy king is going to go there, and then you can check. But here you will see the enemy king will actually have an escaping square. So that's interesting. You can also activate your knight and then try to go for moves like this, check, and mate. Then the last one is a deflection sacrifice. So, or a deflection move. With a deflection move, we try to get one piece away from its defending task. So here we would like to capture this rook, but the enemy king is protecting it. If we just sacrifice our bishop here, the enemy king has to take it or has to move to the corner, and then we will be able to capture this rook. Another example of the deflection sacrifice. So here it's white to move. Well, we want to promote, but of course if we promote, black is going to take us. So what we can do is pin this rook to the enemy king, and now black cannot longer capture our pawn. So the only move for black is to take our rook, and then we can promote to a queen with a check, and we can win back the rook. So another example of deflection, and I will give you a small moment to see if you can find this. So here you can see we have queen to g4. Queen to g4. Why? We are attacking the enemy queen, and of course black cannot capture us, because if black were to capture us, we simply have a back rank checkmate. And at the same time, we also have this checkmate threat. So yeah, black is just going to move this, but of course you can always capture the queen for free. And that was it for our 10 different patterns. I know this was a little bit quick, but I just wanted to show you these, so at least you have seen them once in your life before, so it will be easier to spot them in your games. And I will also leave links down in the description to where you can make more exercises on this, and also how you can study this again, and how you can make more exercises on this. If you are someone who plays chess online a lot of the time, and you are below 2200 ELO, you should also check out my chess training group. Link is down in the description. And as always, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!